Today's July 11th, 2015, and here's the video where I'm going to talk about the insulation on our third floor. Like I mentioned in my previous video, we're going to finish this entire third floor, and because currently we only have R19 in this layer that I'm standing on, I really wanted to make sure that we got a good thick layer of insulation up here in the attic third floor space, just to save energy in the wintertime and also keep it cool in the summertime. So I've got a lot going on, both inside the building and outside the building, and I'll try to go over this with some detail without boring you guys too much. So in the previous video, you might have noticed I put in these pieces. You can only just see them up here at the top. They're all covered up now. But those wooden pieces there on each side of the rafters, those are 1 inch. I just ripped down some 2x4s into 1 inch strips, and those strips run the entire length of each side of these rafters all the way down. And what that does is when I put the rigid foam insulation, this white insulation that you're looking at, when I put that over the top of it, creates a 1 inch air gap that runs the entire length of these rafters. I don't have it yet, but I'm going to be putting in, there's already a ridge vent at the top of the roof up there, and we're going to be putting in vents down at the bottom as well underneath the eaves. So it's going to have a nice 1 inch air gap to have a nice airflow, keep the roof line dry, keep the heat in the summertime moving out of here, things like that. So that was the first step. Get the air gap and then start putting in this rigid foam insulation. This is 2 inch foil faced insulation. The foil faced means that one side of it, in this case it's the side that you're not seeing, has what looks like just aluminum foil, the whole length of it, and that works as a nice reflective surface to reflect the heat out. In this case, it reflects it back out to the roof, and then you can also turn it and face it in to keep heat or cool in, which I'll talk about in a minute. So that was step one. Put this rigid foam insulation throughout this entire third floor. Kind of show you it's all the way down and through there. This insulation is rated at a R13.6, as long as you give it at least a 3/4 inch air gap. And like I said, we gave it a 1 inch air gap, so 13.6 to start. The next step I have to do is that these rafters are kind of rough cut, so it was impossible to get a good tight fit everywhere. So I have to go through and I have to fill all these gaps with spray foam, just cans of insulation, fill all those gaps. And then I'm going to be taping all these seams, get this layer nice and tight so that can act as my first vapor barrier. The next thing, which I've already started, is I had to put in this furred piece. That is so that this span right here is the right amount of space to put in R19 standard fiberglass insulation. When I was figuring out what I wanted to do up here, I wanted to get at least into the R40s. I'm going to be at actually an R46. But I didn't want to spend a ton of money, and I also didn't want to have to make this so thick out into the room that I lost a bunch of living space. So trying to find the right mix of high R value, reasonable cost, and hopefully somewhat compacted. So this is what we came up with. First layer is the 2 inch rigid foam, then a layer of R19 standard fiberglass. That's going to get held in with just strips of regular wooden strapping. So I'll put in a layer, maybe 2 layers of strapping, 16 inches on center, then we'll tuck R19 in behind it, and then we'll just keep that process up. More strapping, more insulation, do that all the way through both sides of this roof line, and then get that all the way up to our finished roof layer, which is going to be at approximately this collar tie level. Once that's done, so we've got our strapping will be the outermost point on this roof line. The next thing is another layer of this exact same insulation, except this time it will be the foil faced side inwards. So, and it will go perpendicular. It will go across the rafters this way instead of vertically like they currently do. So, and that will be just unbroken. You won't, so there'll be no wood showing from the outside to the inside. So there'll be no kind of air gap, thermal gap or anything. So we'll get that all the way through, and we'll tape all those seams up. Going to do the same scheme on the end walls, and we'll tape all those seams up. So for a day or two up here will look like, I don't know, a big aluminum foil oven or something, but it's really actually a lot cooler up here than it was, even with just this one layer. So anyway, we'll have that second layer of rigid foam, and then we'll put on another layer of strapping 16 inches on center, so it will be just over the top of the first layer, and then that is what our sheetrock will attach to. And so you total all that up, and we're looking at an R46.2, I think, throughout this entire roof line and the end walls. And then, like I said, we have R19 in the floor. So this is really only going to be just a storage area and a playroom, and it's going to be on its own heat loop. So we can, when we're not using it, we can close this up, turn the heat down a bit, and then that gives us a really thick layer between this layer and the ceiling that stops the heat from our first floor and our second floor escaping. Now the other things that we have to do, I already mentioned that we have to put in the vents in underneath this area to create that airflow, but I was also worried that when I was coming up with this plan, if I put too much insulation in this ceiling line, suddenly I'm going to probably have some significant snow buildup on this roof, and this is a pretty tall building. There's no way I'm climbing up on this roof to shovel it off in the winter. You can see the pitch here is really steep as well. So in about a month and a half, I'm on the schedule to have a nice new metal roof installed on this building, so that will alleviate that problem, and then we can just continue on with this renovation with no worries about snow load or structural issues or anything. So I think that's it. If you guys have any questions, feel free to comment, and I'll post another video soon. Thanks for watching.